Good morning, good morning. Do, 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 do. Good Tuesday morning, everybody. Here in the future, that is Australia. We're about to refresh this page and find out if all of our hopes have been answered. I mean, I don't hate that. But that's not what we're here for. Here we go. What? Whoa! Oh my goodness. Yeah, obviously. Oh my god. This kills the fling deck. Like, this kills just base mono red mice. This kills Omniscience, but honestly, I'm actually really interested to see if the Omniscience deck survives with the 5 cost reanimation spells, because genuinely they might. Beanstalk feels like they took a Twitter poll and they banned. Although, I mean, look, let's be honest. Oh my god, so many cards. Yeah, Beanstalk was going to take over the format. I was absolutely going to start playing Beanstalk again, and like, Overlords were going to continue to be a problem after rotation. I'm flabbergasted. But then Hopeless Nightmare and this Town Ain't Big Enough, they've also banned the Pixie deck, but only the discard version of Pixie deck that uses Town Ain't Big Enough. I don't even know that Town Ain't Big Enough needed a ban with Beanstalk banned. Like, this is an awesome card, but I guess, yeah, it hitting non-land permanents was a mistake. Oh my god. Oh my god. Let's do some reading. Oh, I'm so excited. Alchemy. Suspended pending rebalance. Pioneer. Tidal Trickery is banned. Historic Counterspell is unbanned. Have fun, historic players. Howdy, gamers. My name is Carmen Klomparens, senior game designer on Magic's play design team. Hello, cheers to play design. You keep the game playable. Okay, previous update to the ban and restricted list was focused on changes to Modern and Legacy with a massive upheaval in Pauper, but for this announcement, we're shining a spotlight on Standard. Yeah! Okay. Oh my goodness. Today's announcement is our once-a-year early rotation window for Standard. Oh, so they actually officially look at it as pre-rote. Set up the next rotation cycle to be as fun as possible. I'm all here for that. I really hope that we haven't missed anything horribly, like, overpowered that was just being kept in check by the awful Standard that we were in, but I doubt it. We do this by saying an early goodbye to a number of cards that have proven their strength and made the format less fun, either by creating unhealthy play patterns or restricting the viable deck building options available in the environment. Monstrous Rage. Below, we'll discuss these bans and our reasoning behind them. Then we'll discuss the lessons learned from these cards for 3-year Standard. My immediate thoughts. So, Cutter and Rage banned not Vivi. Although, interestingly, I do think that, like, Vivi was going to be a problem if we kept things like Town Ain't Big Enough and Up the Beanstalk. We're going to end up with like Team of Vivi. So I appreciate those being cut. What else? Yeah, Overlords were going to be a problem. Pixie's going to continue to be a problem, but we still have Ethereal Armor and the 1 mana whenever you play an enchantment, put a +1/+1 counter. So that can still like do crazy turbo nonsense into Sheltered by Ghosts. And of course, Sheltered by Ghosts is going to continue being the new standard for Standard again. We are announcing the banning of 7 cards in Standard today. 7 is a lot of cards, even for our early rotation window, especially since it has been over 2 years since any cards at all were banned in Standard. You say that like you didn't have complete control over that statement. Our last banned and restricted announcement was roughly 3 months ago, shortly after the release of Aether Drift. At the time, Standard was looking fun and healthy. There were 3 decks clearly at the top of the metagame: red-based aggressive mouse strategies, self-bounce synergy decks powered by Nurturing Pixie, often referred to as Pixie decks, and the Domain Overlord's Ramp deck. But below these 3, there was a sea of other decks that stood a fighting chance on any given weekend. Yeah, I guess that's not unrealistic. I know that 3 months ago people really wanted Monstrous Rage banned and were upset, and I was surprised that This Town Ain't Big Enough wasn't banned because it was a strangely overpowered, uninteractive card. So, I mean, I'm glad that 3 months down the track we've gotten rid of them. The release of Target Dragonstorm in April had a dramatic effect on the Standard metagame, propelling Izzet Prowess to the top of the metagame on the wings of Corey Steelcutter. I mean, propelling any deck that could play Corey Steelcutter to the top of the metagame on the wings of Corey Steelcutter. Represented over 40% of the Standard metagame at Pro Tour, MTG, Final Fantasy. And once again, all I can think of is I'm reading stuff and making a video. It was the deck to beat at the recent round of Standard Regional Championships and represented over 40% of the Standard metagame at Pro Tour, MTG, Final Fantasy. And yes, that's right, I was having a laugh about Yu-Gi-Oh! Players dealing with S-tier formats where they're like, oh my god, a deck has 60% of the metagame and Konami still won't touch it. I saw a Shizu format. It's clear that the Izzet Prowess deck is having a negative effect on the Standard metagame. Its play rate numbers are substantially higher than we have seen in Standard in recent past. Beyond just play numbers, though, the degree to which the deck is warping the rest of the metagame around it is crystal clear. One example is Mono Red, which reinvented itself for an Izzet Prowess world by adopting large numbers of main deck copies of Magebane Lizard. Yes. And woe to myself and anybody else who followed this trend and put it in their Best of One decks, because it turns out that people in Best of One don't care about the meta and play whatever they want, and Magebane Lizard is a bad card unless you're playing into like 40% Izzet Prowess decks. Corey Steelcutter is an obvious target from the Izzet Prowess deck for banning. It is, quite simply, too strong for the format, a card that's a bit stronger than everything else. A little bit stronger than everything else. A little bit. Corey Steelcutter also had a large impact on Modern, a format considerably more powerful than Standard. But it's a little bit too strong for Standard. It had an impact on Modern. It also has the quality of being a challenging card to interact with profitably due to the increased burden of answering artifact cards and the ease with which Corey Steelcutter leaves meaningful board presence behind even when quickly destroyed. So what you're saying is it was Fable of the Mirror Breaker all over again. At this point, it's clear the tools to challenge Corey Steelcutter's dominance don't exist in the environment. I don't know that they exist in any environment. Like, temporary lockdown wasn't keeping it in check. And I can't imagine a card that I could design to answer Corey Steelcutter efficiently that wouldn't annihilate every deck in the format, or be completely useless if Corey Steelcutter isn't in the game, like a Pithing Needle for triggered effects. For the sake of clarity and setting expectations going forward, the banning of Corey Steelcutter is the kind of action we would take in any of our banning windows. That doesn't mean anything because you keep changing your banning windows. The level of dominance Izzet prowess in the recent set of metagame clearly meets our threshold for bans outside this once-per-year standard window. The release of Corey Steelcutter reshaped the landscape of standard. It's challenging to predict what will happen in the metagame after its banning. I mean, it's really not. To make sure the standard metagame is diverse and has room for exploration, we're banning 6 additional cards. The second most popular deck at Pro Tour MTG Final Fantasy was the Azorius Omniscience combo deck, with about a 20% share of the metagame. Really? I forget the numbers. I thought Mono Red was the next most popular. So either I'm wrong or they're miscounting. But it's possible that I'm, biased by the fact that the top 8 was 4 Izzet Prowess decks and 4 Mono Red decks. The Omniscience deck has existed as a part of the metagame for a while, since Omniscience was printed, but climbed in popularity to be a major player after gaining new cards in Roiling Dragonstorm and Meringue River Regent. Yeah, the point at which the deck no longer had to run a win condition. I blame Samuel and every other player like that. Abuelo's Awakening always had the potential to create a deck like this, as 4 mana is cheaper than we normally allow non-creature reanimation effects to be. Normally 5 mana. But we had hoped that turning what brings it back into a creature would allow ample counterplay. This has not proven to be the case for Omniscience. Yeah, because it's Omniscience. Because when you resolve an Omniscience, you can then resolve everything in your deck for free for the rest of time. This is why we don't reprint Omniscience. Like Omniscience is going to cause this problem forever. Combo decks like Azorius Omniscience are something we want to exist in standard, but when too strong, they warp the point around them and reduce the number of viable decks. Yeah, see, this is the real answer, is they put Omniscience in Foundations on purpose because they want Omniscience to exist as a thing people are going to try to cheat out forever, because they want this deck to exist. It's just that jamming a turn 4 Abuelo's Awakening is apparently too good. This is going to be a problem going forward. Like, this is a Bridge from Below Hogak situation where they're like, we're going to ban Abuelo's Awakening. This is the card that is the problem, because it makes every single deck that tries to cheat out enchantments exactly the same, because they're all trying to get out Omniscience. And if you're playing an Omniscience deck, you don't have to run a win condition, because Omniscience is gas and win condition. Like, Omniscience turns every card in your deck into win condition. Monstrous Rage has been powering red aggressive decks in standard since its release in Wilds of Eldraine. Yes. It is one of the strongest and most efficient combat tricks to have ever been printed. Yes. We've enjoyed having a combat trick be a strong standard card. It didn't need to be Monstrous Rage for that to be the case. But it's clear that Monstrous Rage has overstayed its welcome. Yeah. It has enabled combo-style aggro decks more than we would like. Let's not forget that Leyline of Resonance is already banned in Best of 1. And has played a large role in lowering the fundamental turn in Standard and putting players under too much pressure too quickly. In addition, the fact that it grants Trample has decreased utility of blocking in the format and greatly eroded the efficacy of defensive creatures as a counter-strategy to aggressive decks. Yes. It should have been green, because then it would force you to play a green-red mana base. For these reasons, and in the interest of eliminating the least fun, aggressive play patterns in Standard, Monstrous Rage is banned. Blocking is back on the menu. Heartfire Hero has been another key piece of red aggressive deck strength through the last year of Standard. The curve of Heartfire Hero into Manifold Mouse puts the opponent under pressure immediately and forces decks to have ample interaction for the early turns. I don't like the implication that forcing decks to have ample interaction for the early turns is a bad thing. Additionally, Heartfire Hero's Dies trigger gives the red deck significant resiliency to many kinds of removal. Yes. Its strength has shifted the format towards decks that can interact starting on turn 1 or 2, or decks that can play temporary lockdown. We want red aggressive strategies to be a viable option in Standard, but Heartfire Hero has proven to have too much explosive power combined with too much resiliency. As such, Heartfire Hero is banned. We discussed banning only Heartfire Hero or Monstrous Rage, but ultimately decided banning both was the correct course of action. There was a world where they banned Heartfire Hero and not Monstrous Rage? What? The two cards are both independently strong, and leaving either alone would make it likely that aggressive decks in the format would still be combo-style aggro decks with consistent explosive starts and lots of burst damage potential. Yeah, because, like, if we just banned Monstrous Rage, I would just take my Fling deck that has Heartfire Hero, Goblin, and 1 mana Fling, which is another card that should be banned. And then it's also now got Self-Destruct and Screaming Nemesis, which is another huge set of damage. By banning both, we shift the aggressive strategies of the format away from combo-style aggro, decrease the interactional burden on the non-aggressive decks in the format, and thus increase the number of viable decks and cards. Everybody, invest in Hired Claw, because that thing is going to be in Standard for the rest of its life. What do we look? Hired Claw, Screaming Nemesis. I'd be interested to see if Manifold Mouse sees any play after this, because Manifold Mouse is much less good when it's targeting Emberheart Challenger. But we can, like, cut that, maybe keep Emberheart Challenger. Because, like, Emberheart Challenger is amazing, but we might also just, like, cut the Prowess package. Now, let's be clear. Emberheart Challenger is staying in the format as long as we have Monastery Swiftspear. But as soon as Monastery Swiftspear rotates, it's going to be Challenger, Screaming Nemesis, Hired Claw. And it's like, oh, maybe there's going to be a non-prowess mono red version. Domain Overlords. This is the card that was going to take over the... I was going to play so much of this. I spent so long trying to make Zur Eternal Schema work with, like, the Kamigawa Saga creatures, and now we just have straight up Saga creatures, but more importantly, we have the Overlords that are just broken. Up the Beanstalk is no stranger to the ban list, having been banned in Modern since 2023. At this point, Up the Beanstalk has been clearly cemented as a best-in-class source of card advantage for slower decks. I mean, I feel like Up the Beanstalk has been clearly cemented as a best-in-class source of card advantage. End sentence. It shares Corey Steele's cutter's quality of being challenging to interact with profitably, as its controller will almost always be a full card on the exchange. This means decks powered by Up the Beanstalk are hard for many types of strategies to adapt to, which effectively eliminates them from the metagame when Up the Beanstalk decks are present. Yes. The deck building puzzle of Up the Beanstalk has also been solved so many times at this point that we expect it to be more monotonous than engaging as more cost reduction cards may get released in future sets. May get released? We've established that this is a staple card in limited formats going forward. We're never not going to print a Ride's End in a standard set. So they realized that, Up the Beanstalk was a mistake. Like, that's why the new Final Fantasy set said the blue-red trigger was if you spent 4 or more mana to cast it, not if you played something with mana value 4 or more. It's like if you spent 5 mana on something, draw a card, Up to Beanstalk is nigh unplayable. Now, the fact that it draws a card on ETB, that's... Maybe. Orzhov Pixie. Not even Esper Pixie? Wait, we're doing Orzhov Pixie separate to Esper Pixie. Okay. Self-bounce decks have shifted a lot as the format has progressed, with just a small, powerful core constant between iterations. Are they going to show us... They're not going to show us a blue-black self-bounce deck with Kaito. Bruh. Wait, hang on. This means that this Town Ain't Big Enough is getting banned and it's not appearing in any deck? In any deck list being shown off? That's hilarious. Yeah, because it's not in Omni, and it's not in the base Izzet Prowess. It's in VV Izzet Prowess, but not in this one. That's hilarious. They forgot to include... They banned so many cards, they forgot to talk about one. Anyway, Hopeless Nightmare is a key piece of that core, serving the role of 1 mana trinket that is powerful to cast many times a game. That's right, you jam it turn 1, and it's just you're off to the races. The pattern of constant discard it forces on the opponent is amongst the least fun elements of the deck and shrinks the game in a way that makes it hard to come back from once the self-bounce deck gets going. Yeah, turns out repeatable discard is not good for the game because it makes less game happen. In addition, Hopeless Nightmare provides the self-bounce decks with both interaction and damage. Yep. Allowing the deck to position itself as a disruptive, aggressive deck. In the interest of removing the least fun elements of the self-bounce decks, Hopeless Nightmare is banned. So now self-bounce is going to be less self-bounce and more... Well, I mean, it's not going to be self-bounce because this Town Ain't Big Enough doesn't exist. Has seen play in many different standard decks. It's also seen play outside of standard, if I recall correctly. It almost always sees play alongside Storm Chaser's talent. A 2-card package has proven itself in a variety of shells. Most recently, this package played a role in the Izzet Prowess deck. Yeah, you didn't show that off because that would require showing that VV is very powerful and has shifted Izzet Prowess to a new shell, which is absolutely going to stick around. When commonplace, this Town Ain't Big Enough makes the format less fun with its unique ability to interact with any permanent-based strategy while still advancing its wielder's game plan. Yep, because non-land permanent. We're going to keep the version that bounces creatures and must bounce one of your opponents, as opposed to always bouncing as opposed to sometimes bouncing 2 of your opponents and sometimes bouncing 2 of your own stuff. While not a huge share of its overall power, the loop with Storm Chaser's talent is particularly frustrating and adds to the threat of an endgame lockout to many matchups, making games less fun. For those reasons, Town Ain't Big Enough is banned. Yeah, if you play only Best of One, you probably hadn't experienced very much of this, but Storm Chaser's talent, level 2, lets you get back that this town ain't big enough, and then you bounce it to your hand, and then you do it again. It's been a little over 2 years since we announced the shift to 3-year standard. With every set we release, we learn more about how to adapt our design heuristics for this new model of standard. I mean, I feel like it's just a bigger standard. We should know how to design for that. This set of bans is emblematic of 2 key learnings we'll be carrying forward into the future. Corey Steel Cutter is too strong, and people like slightly early mini rotations. First, with the larger card pool of 3-year standard, we need to be more precise with our 1-mana cards and our cards that synergize with 1-mana cards. The larger card pool of 3-year standard. You just need to be more precise in general. 3 of the cards that ban today cost 1 mana, and Corey Steel Cutter asks to be alongside the cheapest cards available. The potential for 1-mana cards to define a format grows as the card pool increases. Legacy. Standard is more fun when the stars of games often cost more than 1 or even 2 mana, and we will be taking steps to ensure that is more true going forward. I mean, you could have just banned the 1-mana cards, and then the stars of standard would have been costing 5 and 7 mana. Second, we need to scrutinize and be careful with the rate of cards that are challenging to interact with favorably. That's just true. Like, I'm sorry, you're saying this post Fable of the Mirror Breaker. With the increased power level of decks in the larger format, that is 3-year standard, decks are very capable of turning a small advantage into a snowball that ends the game. Strong cards that leave resources behind when dealt with, like Cutter and Beanstalk, reliably create that first small advantage. That's an interesting read on how this is going, but okay. Identifying these cards and evaluating their strength in the context of interactional requirements is a task that play design is incorporating into our process going forward. I mean, this is corporate. We're going to do our best to deal with this problem, but like, they were already doing this, and the reality is that sometimes they're going to print cards that are slightly too efficient, and once they get solved in, you know, millions and millions of games, they're going to prove to be unbelievably powerful. Our last announcement for Standard today, considering our next Standard rotation won't be until early 2027, we will be having 2 of our early rotation Standard banning windows before the next Standard rotation. You can expect one of these windows in about 18 months, right before rotation as usual. The other one will be in roughly 9 months around the midway point, but we haven't decided on an exact date yet, and it could move around by a month or 2, because it's what? July. 8, 9, 10, 12. Doing that in April would put it in a weird spot around a set release, I assume. So they're going to do it right before a set release in the same sort of way. All right, let's put this away. Thank you, everybody. Like and subscribe. Go read it on the website. Give them data. And have a good day.